Barcelona thought they had him. They were so close. Sources were saying an agreement was nearly done. The deal was practically signed. The fan base was celebrating. And then one phone call from Jose destroyed everything. Bernardo Silva, free agent, one of the most technically gifted midfielders of his generation. 9 years at Manchester City, 6 Premier League titles, a Champions League, 153 goal contributions, and this summer, completely free. No transfer fee, 0. The greatest bargain in European football. And Barcelona, a club that has chased this man for years, just watched him choose their biggest rival instead. I'm Robert. This is Robert Football Talk. And today, we are telling the story of the transfer that broke Barcelona's heart, the phone call that changed everything, and why Mourinho pulling this off might be the single most important thing he does in his entire second spell at Real Madrid. Stay till the end. This one is special. Subscribe if you haven't already. Turn on notifications, because this summer at Real Madrid is producing content that writes itself. And we are covering every single moment. Let's go. Let me take you back to where this story really begins. Because the Bernardo Silva to Barcelona saga is not new. It is not a 2026 story. It is a love story that has been building for almost 4 years. It started in 2022. Xavi Hernandez had just taken over as Barcelona manager. He was rebuilding the club from the ground up. And one of the first names on his wish list, one of the very first calls his recruitment team made was Bernardo Silva. Xavi was obsessed with him. The pressing, the positioning, the technical quality, the football intelligence. Everything about how Bernardo Silva played was exactly what Xavi wanted to build his Barcelona around. The problem was Manchester City. Pep Guardiola had no intention of selling his most trusted player. Silva was the engine of City's machine, the glue between every department. The player Guardiola turned to when he needed someone to do the difficult, unglamorous, essential work that won football matches. City demanded enormous fees, 80 million, 100 million. PSG came in with 70 million and City said no. The price was always too high. The door was always closed. But Silva himself, and this is the key detail, never hid how he felt about Barcelona. When journalists asked him in 2022 about the links, he smiled and said, "We will see what happens." That is not a denial. That is a man who is leaving the door open, a man who has a dream destination, a man who is waiting for the right moment. That moment came this summer. His contract at City expired. 9 incredible years came to an end. And suddenly Bernardo Silva was a free agent. No transfer fee, no negotiations with City, just a player, his agent Jorge Mendes, and every major club in Europe calling at the same time. And Barcelona moved fast. They had been waiting for this moment for 4 years. They were not going to let it slip. Reports emerged quickly that Mendes had opened conversations with Barcelona, that talks were progressing, that the two sides were getting very close to an agreement. Silva himself gave Barcelona every reason to feel confident. He spoke to reporters in June and said, "Barcelona is an option I have." That is not the language of a man who is undecided. That is a man who is telling you where his heart is pointing. Drop a comment right now. Did you think Bernardo Silva was going to Barcelona before all this happened? Tell me in the comments, because I think most of the football world assumed this was a done deal. And here's where the story gets genuinely dramatic. Because Barcelona were not the only club at the table. Atletico Madrid were also in serious negotiations. Galatasaray had held talks. Saudi clubs were offering life-changing money. MLS was in the conversation. And quietly, very quietly at first, Real Madrid were watching everything from a distance. Now here is something important to understand about Real Madrid's position in all of this. When Mendes first offered Bernardo Silva around in April, Madrid's initial response was cool. Reports at the time said Silva was not in Madrid's plans. That is the official line. That is what came out publicly. But then something changed. Something enormous changed. José Mourinho arrived. Mourinho agreed his deal to become Real Madrid's new manager. And within days, reportedly within hours of the deal being confirmed, he made his demands for the transfer window absolutely clear. He wanted a playmaker, a creative midfielder, someone with elite technical quality, elite football intelligence, and the kind of professionalism that could anchor a dressing room that had spent the last 2 seasons tearing itself apart. Mourinho wanted Bernardo Silva, specifically, by name. And here's the detail that makes this story so uniquely powerful. Mourinho and Bernardo Silva are not strangers. They are not manager and random target. They are compatriots, both Portuguese, both shaped by Portuguese football culture, both understand exactly what the other person is about. Mourinho reportedly reached out to Silva directly, man to man, manager to player, not through agents, not through intermediaries. A direct conversation about what he was building at Madrid, what role Silva would play in it, and why this was the right move at this moment in both their careers. And Bernardo Silva, the man who had been telling Barcelona they were an option, the man who had been sitting in advanced talks with the Catalan club, stopped. He paused everything. He told Mendes to hold the Barcelona negotiations. He needed time. The quote from Mendes to Fabrizio Romano tells you everything. He said, "Bernardo will decide after the World Cup." That one sentence ended Barcelona's hopes. Because a player who has already decided does not need more time. A player who is going to Barcelona signs the contract and announces it before the World Cup. A player who needs time after the World Cup is a player who is waiting to make a very different decision. And then it happened fast. Fabrizio Romano, the most reliable transfer journalist on planet Earth, posted his famous, "Here we go, Bernardo Silva to Real Madrid. Agreement in place. Contract approved, 2-year deal plus a 1-year option. Fast deal by Madrid, started 36 hours ago and closed immediately. Mourinho wanted Bernardo. He says yes, 36 hours. From opening talks to done deal." That is how quickly Mourinho moved when he identified his target. That is the ruthlessness and decisiveness that makes him one of the most effective operators in football history. And Barcelona? Barcelona were left standing in the middle of the transfer market with nothing. After 4 years of waiting, after months of negotiations, after getting close enough to an agreement that their fans were genuinely celebrating, after Silva publicly calling them an option. After all of that, they lost him to Real Madrid. Now, let me tell you why this signing is so much bigger than just the player himself. Because Bernardo Silva is an exceptional footballer, obviously. But what he represents for Mourinho's Real Madrid project goes far beyond goals and assists. Think about the dressing room Mourinho is walking into. We talked about this in our last video. Physical fights between players on the training ground. Stars pretending to fall asleep in team meetings. 3 managers in 1 year. A captain publicly admitting nobody in the squad is mature enough to lead the dressing room. This is the environment Mourinho inherited. And his very first signing is a man who captained Manchester City, who is described by Pep Guardiola, one of the most demanding coaches in football history, as the player he trusts more than anyone else when a game needs to be won. A man with 6 Premier League titles and a Champions League. A man whose professionalism is legendary across the entire football world. Bernardo Silva is not just a footballer for Real Madrid. He is a message. He is Mourinho telling every player in that dressing room, this is the standard now. This is what I expect. This is what a Real Madrid player looks like. Let me give you the numbers so you understand exactly what is arriving at the Bernabéu. 9 years at Manchester City. 153 goal contributions in the Premier League alone. 6 Premier League titles. 1 Champions League. FA Cup winner. multiple League Cups. At 31 years old, still one of the most consistent performers in European football, and arriving completely free. Not one single euro in transfer fee. For context on how remarkable that is, Madrid paid 103 million for Bellingham. They paid 180 million for Mbappe. They paid enormous fees for Vinicius, for Tchouaméni, for Camavinga, and Bernardo Silva. A player of comparable quality and significantly more experience cost them nothing except wages. Mourinho's first signing is free. His first signing is a Champions League winner. His first signing is a man who will anchor the midfield, set the standards in the dressing room, and give the entire squad a model of professionalism to measure themselves against. And Silva himself confirmed what made the difference. He said, "In the end, I am going to try to find a team where I am wanted, where I feel truly wanted." Mourinho called him. Mourinho made him feel wanted. Barcelona were offering a contract. Mourinho was offering a vision. That is the difference between a good manager and a great one. Great managers do not just offer money and opportunity. They make the player feel like they are essential to something bigger. And Silva chose the vision over the contract. Now, I want to talk about Barcelona for a moment, because their reaction to this is something I find genuinely fascinating and genuinely painful if you are a Barcelona fan. This club has been chasing Bernardo Silva for 4 years. 4 years. Multiple transfer windows, multiple conversations, multiple moments where the deal almost happened. And every single time, City's price, the financial rules, the timing, something got in the way. And this summer was supposed to be different. No transfer fee. Silva available on a free. Barcelona finally in a financial position to make it work. Reports of advanced talks. Reports of an agreement almost in place. The stars finally aligning after all those years of waiting. And Mourinho made one phone call. One direct conversation with a fellow Portuguese. And 36 hours later, it was done for Madrid. There is a report from TransferFeed that makes this even more painful for Barcelona. It states that Barcelona ended negotiations for Bernardo Silva despite having an agreement with the player and his representatives. Having an agreement, almost done, and it still fell apart. And there is another detail that has emerged that is almost too dramatic to believe. A report from Cadena Ser in Spain claims that Bernardo Silva broke an agreement with Atletico Madrid to negotiate with Real Madrid. So he was not just choosing between clubs. He was breaking previous commitments to follow Mourinho's call. When a player breaks an agreement with one club and walks away from advanced talks with another club, a club he had called his dream destination for years, in order to join a third club within 36 hours, that tells you the power of what Mourinho said to him. Something in that conversation was so compelling, so clear, so exciting that Silva could not say no.
No.
Now, Barcelona are not simply going to collapse and cry about this. They will move on. They have their own rebuild happening. Jan Koeman from RB Leipzig is one name being discussed. Other midfield targets will emerge. Barcelona are not finished as a club because Bernardo Silva chose Madrid. But there is a deeper wound here that goes beyond the transfer itself, because this is not the first time Barcelona have watched their dream signing end up at Real Madrid. This is part of a pattern, a psychological pattern, a history of near misses and heartbreaks in the transfer market against their biggest rivals. Every time Barcelona get close to something, every time they allow themselves to believe, something happens. And the thing that happens is usually connected to Real Madrid. And this summer, in Mourinho's very first week, with his very first signing, he has delivered Barcelona a reminder of exactly where the hierarchy of Spanish football stands. Free agent, zero transfer fee, secured in 36 hours. Welcome to the Mourinho era. Let me also quickly mention the Julian Alvarez angle here because it connects directly to this story. Perez had promised the biggest transfer in Real Madrid history, 150 million euros. He said it on national television. He gave a date, was going to announce a Galactico. That move was for Julian Alvarez from Atletico Madrid, and Atletico rejected it. Flat out rejected 150 million euros for their own player. So Madrid, who had promised the world the biggest signing in their history, came away from that with nothing. But Bernardo Silva, on a free transfer, having an elite creative midfielder walk into the Bernabéu at zero cost while the 150 million deal fell apart, that is Mourinho turning a potential embarrassment into a masterstroke. That is a man who knows how to manage a club and manage a narrative at the same time. Perez promised a Galactico. He did not get the one he wanted, but he ended up with a Champions League winner, a 6-time Premier League champion, the former captain of the most dominant team in English football history, and it cost him nothing. Silva said after the deal was confirmed, he wanted to find a team where he is truly wanted. Mourinho made him feel that way inside 36 hours. After 4 years of Barcelona making him feel like an option, a possibility, a future plan, Mourinho made him feel like the answer, like the foundation, like the first and most important piece of a project that is going to change Spanish football. Whether that project delivers what Mourinho and Perez are promising is a different question for a different video. But the opening move, the statement of intent, the message sent to Barcelona and to every other club in Europe, Bernardo Silva to Real Madrid is exactly that. The Mourinho era has started. And it has started with the most humiliating defeat Barcelona could have suffered in the transfer market. Drop a comment. Tell me honestly, is Bernardo Silva the right signing for Mourinho's Madrid? Or is a 31-year-old free agent not the Galactico that was promised? Agree or disagree? Comment below. And if this video gave you the full picture, if you understand this story better now than you did 20 minutes ago, hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications, because the Real Madrid transfer window is just getting started. Mourinho has his first signing. The Bellingham situation is still unresolved. The 150 million Galactico is still being chased. And every single development is going to land right here on Robert Football Talk. I'm Robert. See you in the next one.